for 45 days or more for whatever reason, whether you lost it, or you just stopped using it, maybe it even broke, whatever. Just get back an MTN by recharging and get 2,000% on your first recharge of every month. And if you've lost your SIM,
are we live?
Yeah. Just visit
Thanks for letting us know.
Center,
and I just asked that you please let us know so we can actually have nice thumbnails, because our thumbnails suck at moments because you guys don't tell us before you go live.
If you load 100 naira,
thank you very much.
Get 2,000 naira. Load 200 naira and get 4,000 naira. And then if you load 500 naira, you get 10,000 naira. Isn't that incredible? Well, don't waste time now. Get back on MTN right now and know what it truly feels like to be welcome to benefits. Remember, terms and conditions apply. Smooth.
Banking shouldn't be hard. And we agree. With a Diamond Yellow account, all you have to do is dial *710# to start banking, even without the internet. Whether you want to transfer money to any bank account, pay bills, request debit cards, buy airtime, withdraw, or deposit money, just dial *710#. Hey, don't just take our word for it. Dial *710# to start banking at your convenience and without hassle. This feature is available to all mobile phones. It's banking made simple. For inquiries and support, please call 0700 300 0000 or call 118 toll-free on MTN or visit Diamond Bank branches, MTN walk-in centers, and agent locations.
MTN, everywhere you go. The Smooth Breakfast presents the headlines, the stories, the news. In-depth analysis of national current affairs.
Studio.
Fresh
mics are up. Good morning, Lagos, and thanks for staying with us on Smooth Breakfast with Folu and myself, Valentine. This morning it's time for us to go into detailed analysis of the news on our papers this morning. And joining us to do justice to this is Cheta. Cheta, good morning.
Good morning.
And Orji Uka.
Good morning.
And Ikemesit Effiong.
Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning. You can find Cheta at Chickstar on Twitter, Orji at Orji Uka, and Judge Ike, that's Ikemesit at Judge Ike on Twitter. Use the hashtag FreshlyPress981 when you're sending your tweets to us. Join the conversation on WhatsApp, and then we'll tweet that number on WhatsApp as well on our Twitter handle. Is that 91FM Lagos.
All right, we are about to launch into the first story of this morning, and it comes into us from the Vanguard newspaper. I cannot be silenced, says Dino Melaye, as police and DSS lay siege to his residence. Now, yesterday, the news broke that Senator Dino Melaye had been arrested. And it seemed that, in fact, he'd actually been detained by officers, by immigration officials, but yet he did manage to avoid police arrest at the time and was whisked away in a waiting vehicle to what people then discovered was his home. And we discovered also that police surrounded his house. He tweeted about it. There was no vehicular movement allowed on his road, even though other colleagues of his tried to show up to support him. They were not allowed to be with him. They're not allowed to go inside. Orji, a rather dramatic turn of events at the moment. Some people are claiming that, well, the police did not conduct an arrest. They didn't have the appropriate legal instrument. What is your take on this, considering that he had been declared as a wanted person?
Well, first thing first, we know that nobody is above the law. Under the constitutional law we practice in Nigeria, only two persons at the federal level, as the president and the vice presidents, and then the federal governors and their deputy governors at the state levels have limited immunity, said that you can't arrest them whilst in office. So that's not available to every other person. So that's the first thing that I should put out there. However, there must be a procedure for doing things. So you want to arrest someone, there's a procedure that the police officials should know about, particularly at that high level. The whole thing, the whole drama about Dino Melaye is completely unnecessary. It's a distraction, and I don't know what they're trying to achieve. We've seen pictures in the past where Dino Melaye was in the same gathering with
his colleagues.
With colleagues, and police officers were there dressed, and then you are saying that he's wanted. What he did yesterday, I don't even understand it. And then we just like drama a lot. So you want to arrest him? Why block the entire streets? You don't allow vehicular movement even for those who live on that street. What are they trying to achieve?
What do you think triggered this particular move, and why has it been so dramatic, do you think?
I can't say. The same Dino Melaye, we had issues in the past where he was alleged to have given bribe to a judge handling his election petition, and just like that, nothing was heard of it again. So you don't really know. Well, the reporters say that the police officers who came for him claimed that the orders came from above. Above where? From the IGP, from the president, from the Senate president, although I don't believe that last one. The whole thing is just, like I said, it's a waste of time. We have huge problems that Nigerians are facing, caused by both the executive and legislative arm of government.
Right.
They should face their business and stop distracting us.
And finally, before we let this go entirely, but do you think this is a violation of procedure?
Yeah, completely. I think it is. From what happened at the airport, even though this story is not really about the airport part, but more about the siege on his house. At the airport, we understand that he was detained first
by immigration
officers,
yes,
who didn't have any basis except the fact that the police had called to say don't let him out of the country. So he got there and said, okay, what is the basis for detaining me? Why don't you allow me to travel? And they say his name is on the watch list of the Interpol. When was it published? By who? How? No response. So that's the story. If that is correct, then there's something wrong there. Like I said, it's not above the law, but it's a procedure for doing things, and I don't think it's been followed in this case.
All right, thank you very much for that, Orji. Please send in your thoughts to us. Use that hashtag freshlypressed981. We will get to your comments shortly, and of course, send them in to us on our WhatsApp number as well. The next story comes in from the Vanguard newspaper. Manufacturers are seeking a downward review of the Lagos Environmental Development Levy. They're saying that there's been a 150% increment on the Environmental Development Levy, and they just simply will not stand for it. Cheta?
Well, the first question, and Vanguard, thanks for a very short story. The first question that comes to my mind is what environment? This weekend I went to Ijibo, passing through Oshodi and Isolo, and the whole place is a mess. So what environment is LASG working on? But that's just a pet peeve. Let's not talk too much. What's important here is the ease of doing business concerns. And the ease of doing business concerns are mainly because of things that could be in control of the Lagos State government. Two figures. Based on Q3 last year figures from the NPS, unemployment rate in Lagos is 40%, totaling actual unemployment and underemployment. Actual unemployment is 18.8, underemployment is 21.2%. For Lagos, these are national figures. For Lagos, the unemployment rate, total unemployment rate has risen quarter by quarter by quarter. So we have in Q1 of 2017 28%, Q2 30.2%, and Q3 32.7%. And
again, these are figures from
the National Bureau of Statistics. Yeah, potentially this is a disaster. So we don't need LASEPA or the Lagos State government or whoever making regulations or laws that make things more difficult for manufacturers. Rather, they should be easing things for manufacturers so that manufacturers can get enough voice off the streets.
Thank you very much for that, Cheta. Concise and to the point. As we keep moving through our points, let's talk about a topic that has caused some consternation for a while, national identity cards. We cannot produce national identity cards for everyone, says NIMC. The National Identity Management Commission has said they can't produce a physical cards for everyone who's enrolled, despite the huge public clamor for it. They are saying, though, even though they do have some of the best cards in the world, the ones currently available are for those who enrolled in 2013, 2012, but it's really about the national identification number, not the card. They go on to talk about how Social Security in the US connects everyone in the United Kingdom. You have your insurance number, and this is what we should be focusing on, because identity is everything. Ikemesit, over to you.
Well, the headline sounds a bit hyperbolic. It almost seems like they are saying that they will only produce national identity cards for a class of citizens, but that's not actually the case. They're simply saying, and
we're being prudent financially. Yeah,
we're being prudent financially because they haven't been able to secure the funding to get the cards out there to get the cards printed out there for lots of people. So for a lot of people who have been registering, and they actually say that their database has grown from about 5 million to 30 million in the last 5 to 6 years. A lot of those people will not have those cards, but they will be issued their national identity numbers almost instantaneously. The interesting bit about the story, away from the fact that there's a funding constraint which will probably delay the pipeline with which they will be able to produce those cards for everyone, is that according to the NIMC's head of legal, regulatory and compliance services, once the commission begins the full implementation of the national identity card scheme, it would penalize any organization that refuses to acknowledge it as a valid form of identification in Nigeria, which is, you know, par for the cause, because that's the entire idea behind the national identification registration scheme, which is to ensure that there is a harmonized database of all Nigerians.
Now, speaking of harmonized database, Ikemesit, they keep sort of skirting around the issue of how they're going about to sort of consolidate and harmonize all the databases. There is a brief mention of the BVN here, but only so far as to say it exists. Not to say what they're doing to try and get people who've already given up information, whether it's to the banks for the BVN, whether it's to the passport office. We still do not know to what extent the data is being harmonized, because citizens are still having to find areas to queue to try and sort out the national identity. I mean, it's a bit confusing there. Why do you think they haven't sort of expanded on that?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think this problem stems from the fact that the entire issue of the lack of a central database of Nigerians has not exactly been addressed from a harmonized, holistic perspective. I know I've talked about this at least once here on Freshly Pressed. The largest database that we have in the country right now is the voters registration roll, right? And that's about 65 to 67 million Nigerians, as it were. But there are certain aspects of that, depending on when you register, that does not include biometric information. The BVN database is about 39 million now, right? As it were. Yeah, it's about 39 million, but there are about 45 million bank accounts in the country. And there are serious legal considerations that have not exactly been adequately addressed, you know, in terms of we are handing over personal information to this authority and that authority and that authority, and what are the legal protections that are involved in that.
What about the political implications?
Well, if you've not addressed the legal, then political is par for the course, isn't it?
Yes, because what are lawmakers doing in terms of trying to protect our information that is being bandied about, being sold on a daily basis to third-party marketers from all sorts of areas? What are we doing to try and make sure that if we all have this harmonized national identity...
You can't even get the legal when you don't sort the political. That's where I'm standing from. And this is this simple. If we harmonize all the databases, I'm willing to bet a lot of money that we will find that we are not 180 million or 200 million, and that's the first issue. Because when we do that, then we'll have things like, we'll now start to do things like district delimiting and all of that, delineation, rewriting everything, and that's politically exclusive. So such that when Festus Odimegu talked about it some 5 years ago, it was amplified.
Yeah, it was very just mention it as an aside. There's been a data protection bill that's been sitting for the National Assembly for 4 years. So.
National Assembly, if you could please take some time to come chat with us here on Smooth 98.1, we'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, we've been accused of not giving them the opportunity to speak, so let me just put that out there officially.
Open invitation.
Let's move away from that now. 10 billion Naira Adeosun Largesse, Saraki's National Assembly paid 5.6 billion to 44 unqualified firms. There's a full list according to the Premium Times, and this table that they are shaking is a heavy table indeed. So Nigeria's National Assembly, led by the Senate President Bukola Saraki and House Speaker Yakubu Dogara, according to the Premium Times investigation, paid out over 5.6 thereabouts to 44 unqualified contractors, 17 of which of these companies are not even registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission, they say. And they say that this 10 billion naira, most of which was spent on exotic cars, was sort of obtained by the National Assembly, submitting a list of these contractors, claiming that they owed these contractors money. Rather damning stuff here. Orji, over to you, please. What is your take on this entire story, this expose, as it seems?
At the time when you were expecting the National Assembly to stand their ground and how do I put it now, put the president on his toes over the issue of the lack of approval by the National Assembly of sum of $469 million, which we used to purchase helicopters or jets from the US. At the time when you expected the National Assembly to stand their ground and ask questions, find out why the president gave out, you know, some 2 weeks ago, we also heard about $1 billion which the president had approved
Yes.
at the Federal Executive Council meeting or something like that.
And then 2 weeks later, they came back to deny it.
To say they deny it. In this case, their information is available, so there's no denial. Unfortunately, National Assembly that should stand their grounds are themselves emerged in this other issue of paying money to contractors who are
Pots
not
and kettles. Pots and kettles.
who, in some cases, not registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission, which is even terrible. And then in other cases, although some of these companies are registered, they do not qualify to carry out procurement on behalf of the federal government by reason of provisions of the so it's really annoying. Now, in this case, this is says 5.6 billion naira has been paid to 44 unqualified contractors. From the Premium Times account, the story is that 17 of these companies are not registered at all with the Corporate Affairs Commission. So it means that they're not eligible in the first place. Because if you see the list, when they issue, part of the requirements for public procurement is that they would bring out some of the things you need to comply with. You must be registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission. You must have paid your tax for maybe 3 years. There are a lot of things.
PPP,
A lot of requirements. So how do people scale those requirements? How do you just dole out money to people? It's even
Very
an issue
simple.
with
When you do
cars
them out
even-
to yourselves.
That's the problem. When the car's even purchased in the first place, that's even another thing we don't know.
Lagos,
So
please note that this is a jailable offence,
It is a
allowing
jailable
unqualified
offence.
firms to get government jobs
This
in such a
this
way.
is my own take on this. The original story was about the 10 billion before. This is a follow-up story.
Yes.
And the Minister of Finance, Ikemesit Effiong, the Senate President, Saraki, and the Speaker, Yakubu Dogara, all came out to issue statements denying and all of that.
but that's not saying anything.
Crucially, they hinted at but didn't explicitly say when they will sue Premium Times. And I suspect that the story is true because the byline in the story is a certain Mosikile Mojit. He wouldn't put his byline on the story if he doesn't know what he's talking
He
about.
said it with his chest. Thank you very much for that. We do have a number of comments coming through, so we're going to go over to those very quickly.
This one's from Zeus. Zeus from Kelly says, why can't we use BVN as our social security number in Nigeria? It's a good question we're going to look at. We have more comments here coming in on Twitter. This one says, but Cheta, the Lagos government employs people as thugs now. They collect tax from bus drivers and traders.
That's from Osaso
Osas.
Monzua.
Okonkwo Samuel says, I do not understand. Is there any group of armed men protecting Senator Dino Melaye that the police is laying siege rather than moving in to arrest him? If they have a warrant, then it's a shame they think Nigerians will not watch on as if it's another version of BB Nigeria.
Samuel, apologies, we probably didn't mention also in the story, it did say that there were a whole camp of IDPs, internally displaced persons, that had come out to also stand to barricade his home. They said that Dino Melaye is their benefactor and they will not allow the police to take him.
That's interesting. Anyway, so we'll move on very quickly to this next story now from The Punch. EFCC arrest Ibori's ally, Nwaoboshi, for alleged 6 billion naira fraud. And an interesting twist of events. Now, the Nwaoboshi, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, that arrested the lawmaker, represents Delta North Senatorial District, Senator Pete Nwaoboshi. He was alleged to have defrauded the government of 6 billion naira. In that amount, he said it was said that he got a contract to, supply 500,000 plastic chairs or desks and tables, really, chairs for schools in the Niger Delta region. A petition was filed, the complaint was filed to the government, and then he rushed to supply 75,000 pieces to Akwa Ibom State, primary schools and secondary schools. In another allegation, they said he awarded the contracts to the tune of 3.4 billion naira to about 40. How many companies here? 15. Oh, well, anyway, 15 companies registered in the names of relatives, sisters, other relatives, and all that. And in one other allegation, he was supposed to supply construction equipment to the Direct Labor Agency of Delta State that were supposed to be brand new. They sent a letter to customs and they verified that they were refurbished. Cheta.
I've been watching Nwaoboshi. There are 3 senators that I'm particularly interested in because in various ways they represent me. Nwaoboshi is one of them. The other 2 being Ashafa and Odua. And I tend to follow the activities a lot. Of the 3 of them, Nwaoboshi is by far the worst. By far, saying there is no. And one thing I know for a fact is that in his Anioma constituency, he's not well liked because he's very tight-fisted. People always used to complain. You meet him here, he will say, "Go Adi, go Adi," and many of them in that region have actually been pulling away from him. Heck, even the Delta State Governor Okowa has increasingly been seen with a chap called Ned Nwoko, who used to be a former House of Reps member that is running for Nwaboshi's seats in 2019. Nwaoboshi has been behaving like a drowning man, trying to associate more and more with James Ibori in the hope that Ibori will prevail on Okowa to support him. But I sincerely doubt that that will happen. Be that as it may, that's a political implication of all of this. The real meat on the table here is I hope the EFCC, after all of these allegations, can build a diligent and watertight case to convict him. This is all a waste of time if they cannot do that.
Thank you very much, Cheta. Ikemesit, I'll come to you with this next story from ThisDay newspaper. National Assembly Executive Head for Showdown over an unapproved $496 million withdrawal from the excess crude accounts. Now, this is in part really the specific amount that was paid in a government-to-government transaction between Nigerian government and the United States government. In this story that's carried by ThisDay, it was said that, remember how we did a short recap here and said the federal government said, oh, they approved $1 billion for, procurement of arms.
Yeah.
And then it came back 2 weeks later, presidency denying that was not approved.
Yeah.
And then that they would follow due process, they respect due process, and they'll come to the National Assembly for approval. Now, this story now revealed that they actually went ahead to pay this sum, this $496 million, to the United States Treasury.
Yeah.
And it said that the president pre-assumed that they would approve it.
Well, the operating word that the presidency is using is pre-approved.
Pre-approved.
Right, yeah. So it's worth noting the timelines, right? So the story about the $1 billion came out roughly at about the middle of March, but this transaction apparently was done in April, and the letter was communicated to the National Assembly. This transaction was done to the U.S. Treasury in February, and it was only communicated to the National Assembly on the 13th of April.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the fact that under our constitutional arrangement, it is the legislature, in this case the National Assembly, that has the power of the pause, the power to approve, and we have had history. Correct me if I'm wrong, Orji. I think it's been decided in the court with respect to the legality or otherwise of the excess crude account, and whether the National Assembly has supervisory jurisdiction or if it's still within the court.
I think it's in court.
Yeah, I think it's still within.
Can I just check something? Because this approval for the $1 billion was supposed to have happened during a FEC meeting also in December.
In December,
last year, actually.
Yes, exactly.
So this is something that had been actually in the pages of the newspaper. So it's a question as to when this was now communicated. But FEC did know about this from December last year because we spoke about it right at the beginning of this year before it came up again in March and then April. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then again, it's one thing to say, oh, okay, we are going to seek extra budgetary approval or to the effect of $1 billion for this, and then carry out a transaction in February.
At least they recognize that they need approval.
Well, yes, but then again, the transaction was carried out without one, said approval, and two, notice, right? So the notice happened after the fact, and it was still done without approval. And so the National Assembly, right? I mean, there are lots of people who will make political capital of this, and already the PDP lawmakers in the National Assembly are already posturing and saying that the president really needs to be called out on it. They have a point in principle, but Cheta is right.
All right, I've got a couple of messages coming in very quickly. Yinka sends in this message saying, Mr. Oga, when you say there should be procedure for arrest, talking about Dino Melaye, especially at that high level, I don't understand. This is what leads to having two sets of rules. That is one for the rich and another for the poor. How does the police arrest anybody on the streets of Lagos? Do they lay siege? No, they pick you up and that is all. So what's all this action movie in Abuja? Dino is wanted, pick him up like SARS would pick up anybody else. Otherwise, the police is simply just incompetent. This one comes in from Ike, who says withdrawal without appropriation is unarguably an impeachable offense, he says. And very quickly on Twitter, Uka says Nigeria is not 180 million. We're the only country in the world where you have more people in the desert than on the coastlines. It's a fraud.
We'll talk about citizens in other countries, especially in South Africa, where they're facing xenophobic attacks. Now, in recent times, we've heard reports, especially between 1998 and 2013, xenophobic attacks that pervaded the space, and we heard in the news. It was disturbing. Brought the two governments together to sign a memorandum of understanding in 2013 to cease those attacks, but it seems like that agreement was not honored. We now started seeing recent attacks again in between 2016 and 2017. Now, the Nigerian community in South Africa has raised an uproar, really, confirmed the killing of one Clement Nwogu, allegedly burnt alive by a mob in the latest xenophobic attacks in the country. Orji, let's go into the story.
You want to say this is one attack too many, but it almost certain to happen again. It's just annoying. I think it's gone beyond the issue of signing a memorandum understanding between the countries. It's beyond the issue of simply inviting their head of foreign mission to come to answer questions. Nigeria as a government needs to. But you see, why it's difficult to analyze issues like this is that when you talk about it, you now ask yourself, what of those that are killing within our own shores ourselves?
Absolutely.
But for this story, it's annoying. Now, this is the reason. They said the victim was murdered in cold blood over his accent and habit, which the mob supposedly found offensive. I don't understand. Accent and habit.
In most cases, like, it's never understood.
It's annoying, really, but Nigerian government, it's for them, really.
We need to move on to this next story from Vanguard. LEC waiver. Lagos State government moves against conversion of residential buildings to religious centers. So the government yesterday warned religious organizations, churches, mosques, all the wise, those who are converting residential buildings to worship centers without approval to immediately stop or face appropriate sanctions. Cheta, what's your take on this?
This thing of converting houses to churches and mosques
and offices.
The office is a different matter. There's economic activity from offices, so I wouldn't complain too much about that. But there's, it's so counterintuitive to our culture and traditions. There's a Hausa saying, "Agina masalata ba masalata kawai ba." That's basically where you have to build Muslims rather than building mosques. But in northern Nigeria, and sorry if it appears to be a digression, in northern Nigeria there's a preponderance of mosques everywhere. You see, and we also have that habit down here. For example, the Redeemed Christian Church have this target, as it were, that there should be a church on every street corner. This kind of behavior, a friend of mine moved out of his house in Iynches because there was a church that placed their loudspeaker just by his bedroom window. I mean,
it's a common occurrence.
It's not. It's the obscenity. That's the word I was looking for. It's actually quite obscene. We behave as if God cannot hear us, whereas all the religions teach that He's everywhere.
Beyond the religious sentiments, could it be a move for them to avoid a land use charge that gives them
land use charge,
presumably a waiver?
Basically, people are using the name of God to run away from their obligations to society, forgetting give unto God what belongs to God and give unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. We are hypocrites. End of story.
Thank you, Cheta. So the next and last story here from Guardian. Nigeria loses 1.3 million under 5 children to preventable diseases annually. And this is coming on the heels of UNICEF report. The United Nations Children's Fund says about 1.3 million children in Nigeria die before attaining the age of 5 from cases from lack of proper reproductive health packages, routine immunization, and dysfunctional primary health care centers. Ikemesit.
Yeah, we ranked top in Africa. We are the 3rd highest globally, next to India and Pakistan. I suppose they trump us by sheer numbers, right? So, but this just illustrates the absolute breakdown of primary health care, in the country, right? And so for a lot of middle class and lower middle class Nigerians, especially in the wake of the recession, you've seen a squeezing out of discretionary spending, and for millions of Nigerians, healthcare falls under the discretionary spending part, right, of their spending plans, as it were. Yes, and so you've got a situation where a lot of people are skipping the hospitals, skipping doctors, skipping nurses, and just going to the local pharmacy or making recourse to more traditional forms of medicine for medical conditions that are actually quite serious in the case of expectant mothers, in the case of pregnancies. And so free primary health care and getting adequate funding. We were talking about it last week. We were talking about funding for our malaria programs and all of that. Those things are interventions that might help. But with the dysfunctional state of our health care, I'm so sorry, we'll continue.
It's a really sad situation. We'll take messages before we go.
Indeed. As we're pretty much done. This one comes in from Osazuma as well. He's back in. He says, see Cheta speaking Hausa with Igbo accent. He's just speaking the Hausa. Bless him for that. We've got email from Ikeja who says, places of worship are now a hustle. They're moving into every available space they can find, just like places of business are opening up in every residential estate you can find. Thank you very much for that email. Next time, people will now say there's traffic. Don't put your office in a place where they're just supposed to be homes. The roads can't take it. But we are done this morning. Thank you to everyone who's been watching up on YouTube. Please catch the replay there, youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. And of course, continue the conversation with our analysts on Twitter at Orji Uka, at Judge Ike is Ikemesit Effiong, and at Chickster is Cheta Nwaeze.
Coming up next is Grapevine. That's where we talk everything entertainment. So we'll have special guests coming in. That's at 8:15.
DJ Lambo.
The headlines, the stories,
We don't have an exact time.
the news,
No.
in-depth analysis of national affairs.
No wahala.
Fresh